Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining me for Walking with the Word. Today I want to talk about simplicity. Simplicity is a beautiful topic. In fact, we were exploring it at my church on Sunday. It was a real privilege to be part of the service, and it got me really thinking and reflecting on simplicity. What is simplicity? And just as a fundamental starting point, simplicity is an attribute of God. God is simple, and that's both God is simple in his being, he's spiritual, but also God is simple in his ways. His ways are uncomplicated. Now that doesn't mean that God is naive. That doesn't mean that God lacks wisdom and depth. Simplicity is different. We often talk about simplicity in our culture in a negative way. We use it in a kind of derogatory way. If we call someone simple, we tend to mean it as an insult. But actually, simplicity is beauty. It's a criteria that's used in science to guide people to the best explanations. And in fact, simplicity is not the opposite of wisdom, and simplicity is not the same as naivety. Simplicity is the opposite of being kind of overcomplicated and having confusion and mess and chaos. So when we're talking about this spiritual simplicity, it's not a negative thing, certainly not in the way that it's commonly used in culture. Simplicity is a positive, beautiful thing to pursue. Now, I love the way that my pastor framed it on Sunday in her sermon. She was talking about how the Garden of Eden was a state of pure simplicity. They had everything they needed. They had affluence, well-being. It was a place of happiness and peace, and all of their needs were met and provided for. It's a place of abundance, a place of fruitfulness, and the garden was full of all sorts of beauty and fruits. And it's interesting how Satan came along and just enticed Eve towards the one tree that they know they weren't allowed to eat from. And the lie of Satan was that there's more. Even though they were in this place of beauty and contentment and fruitfulness and fulfillment and satisfaction, that place of incredible contentment, the lie of Satan was that there's always that bit more. Surely God didn't say, and just sowing those seeds of doubt. Now, in 2 Corinthians 11 verse 3, Paul puts it this way. He says, I worry that Satan will distract you, just as he distracted Adam and Eve from the purity and the simplicity of devotion to Christ. So Paul's concern for the church was that they would not be distracted from the purity and the simplicity of devotion to Christ. So notice how Paul identifies that same mistake in Adam and Eve. It was about they had everything they needed and they had that simple, beautiful way of life, and they were enticed by wanting more, the lie that there's more, the kind of lie of materialism. So I wanted to talk about the process of simplification. What does it mean to simplify our lives? And there are different ways that we can simplify, and I think I could break it down into 4 areas. You can simplify by cutting something out, cutting it down, merging it with something else, or in some cases simplification may be that you actually have to take a new thing in. So I just want to work through each of these 4 things and unpack them. So the first thing is simplifying can just mean cutting something down, doing less of something to make your life a bit more simple. That could be a commitment that you do, maybe something on a regular basis. You're doing something 3 times a week where you're having to kind of meet to fulfill a commitment, go to certain meetings, you're part of a board or a committee. It could be that you're invested in some social media project or something, but your life is becoming complicated because you've just got too much of that thing in your life and you actually need to cut it down a little bit. So the starting point is going to God and saying, are there any things in my life, God, that I need to cut down and reduce? Or it may be that you actually have to completely cut something out altogether. You've got to lay it down in order to simplify your life. Because complexity comes about when we just have too many things on the go at once. We're just juggling too much. Simplicity comes with less, and less is more. But it can be really hard to lay things down and drop things, especially if we've invested time and energy and skill and effort into something. And particularly difficult to lay something down if we've made a commitment to it. We've said, no, I'm going to see this through, I'll do this. And then we sense God saying, no, you've got too much on, you need to lay this thing down. And it can be really hard to do that. So my encouragement is go to God, seek him, have open hands, be prepared. If God says you need to lay something down, then just be ready to lay it down. Go to God with open hands, invite him into any and every area of your life, and let him be part of the journey of simplification. So the first two ways, one is to cut things down, just reduce our commitments, reduce the amount of time and energy and effort and input we have to put into certain things. Maybe that we end up needing to do that. The second one is to completely lay something down, as in to completely sacrifice it, and it can be difficult to say no to things, but that can release stress, it can release anxiety, it can simplify your life, it can help you put more time and energy into other things that God does want you to prioritize. The third one is this thing of merging. So it may well be that you have a commitment, you've got something that's going on, and then a new commitment comes along, and with the first you can actually meet two needs, two birds with one stone, and that's a really kind of clever way of living. And I'd encourage you, if you can find ways to do this in your personal life, in your professional life, don't see that as lazy, it's efficient. If you can meet a need like that, then do it. It's good to kind of double up. So find ways, think about your life, reflect on areas where things could be combined or merged in order to simplify things, to free up time, to free up energy, to free up resources. And the fourth is that simplification isn't always this process of losing and laying down and dropping things. Sometimes to get a more simple life, you actually have to take things up, you have to bring habits into your life, you have to be intentional and pursue new things, you have to take on things that you didn't take on before. So one example is, as a family, we felt challenged and encouraged to take a Sabbath. Now, on the one hand, you might think, well, isn't that laying down lots of other things that you would be doing on a Sunday and kind of putting less into it? Yeah, kind of, but Sabbath takes intentionality, it takes practice. There are certain things that we do as we Sabbath as a family which we've actually brought into our life as new things, kind of new routines, new patterns, new practices, which are all conducive to rest and quality time together. So that would be one example of how simplification can be taking on something new. Another example might be if you sense a calling just to go out and seek God. I've had this recently. I just felt drawn to the hills to go and spend time with God and seek him and just be in his presence. That's adding something to my week that I wasn't doing originally, but I believe that's part of a journey of simplification and a journey of purification. Notice how Paul puts purity and simplicity together. So in some cases, the journey of simplification is actually the journey of listening to God and saying, oh, there's some things that are lacking in my life, some things that I need to take on. And that's the other thing I just want to say about this journey of simplification, becoming more simple, is that you actually have to be intentional. It's a discipline, it's something you have to pursue. It's been included in my church because my church is doing a series on holy habits, and habits take discipline, intentionality, you have to be purposeful about them, you have to think and plan. So I would encourage you, the starting point is going to God and saying, God, where in my life are things too complicated? Where would you like to start? The Bible puts it this way, it says that God looks down from heaven on the earth and looks for willing hearts. And I think being prepared to have a simple life and to simplify your life in the way that God would want you to simplify your life is part of that willingness. So I think the journey starts with willingness, but involved in it too is this process of self-reflection and introspection. God's given us brains and minds to analyse and solve problems for a reason, and sometimes the problems can be there's too much complexity in our lives. We need to simplify things down so we can spend some time kind of thinking and reflecting on areas that we need to simplify. So simplification is a rewarding journey, it's a fulfilling journey. The end product is that we have lives that are less anxious, more in tune with God's rhythm and grace, more receptive and perceptive to God's calling. And another thing that we've experienced as we've kind of been simplifying our home and kind of either selling or giving or sharing things that are in our home with other people, is that we've realised that less really is more. It's crazy how you begin to notice and see and appreciate and enjoy things that you didn't enjoy before when you actually start to clear stuff out or give stuff away, share stuff with people, and suddenly it's like, oh, I didn't realise I had that pair of jeans, I've not worn them for half a year. The process of simplification, ironically, means that you actually appreciate and enjoy the things you have more, and you actually end up feeling genuinely like you have more in your life, not less. And so I'd encourage you to really go on this journey intentionally. There are different areas that we can simplify. We can simplify our time and commitment. We can simplify our relationships, our professional lives. We can simplify our goals. We can simplify our church life and the ministry commitments we have. We can simplify our homes in terms of our possessions and the way our homes are structured and organised, and all of these different areas are things that we can think about. But it's a journey. It's not about doing it all in one go and saying I'm suddenly going to have the most simple life ever. There's a process to this, and don't try and take everything on at once. And the other thing to remember is there's grace in this. There's so much grace. God's arms are open to us as we're willing and ready to simplify our lives. God is so proud of us and so full of grace for the times that we struggle, maybe the areas that we just don't want to or struggle to simplify. This is all about walking in God's rhythm and in His grace, and God continually showers us with His grace and continually showers us with His love. So just enjoy the journey, guys. Enjoy the journey of simplification. Right, I'm going to finish with a prayer today, and I want to pray a blessing of simplicity, and that we'll be aware of areas to simplify. So Father, I pray that you would align us with your will. Help us to identify areas in our lives where things are too complicated, maybe where we have stresses and anxieties, we're taking too much on, our lives are too crowded or too cluttered. Help us to work out whether it's a case of laying down, completely cutting out something, whether there are things that we can merge, Father, and reveal to us if there are areas where we need to take things on, things that are lacking as part of that simple life that you call us to. Thank you that you have given us a paradigm example of simplicity, the optimum balance of yeses and nos in life. When we look at the life of Jesus and His disciples, help us to reflect on that and emanate that life and emanate that pattern, emanate that rhythm and grace in our own lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for joining me today, guys. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye for now.